Hi everyone, my name is Nikki and I am the surprise First Lady of the Dead Religion podcast, and I am truly honored to be a part of this podcast and this family, and I am so excited to see what God's going to do through this podcast, including through myself. I had no idea I was going to actually do a podcast all to myself and by myself, so it's definitely stretching me. And as I was praying about what God wanted me to talk about today, the one thing that kept coming up was family. Family has always been a big part of my life since I was a little girl, and it is a big part of my life now that I have my own family. So I'm going to go through my family tree, and I'm going to try to go through as simple as possible so it doesn't get lost. So my parents actually were born in the Philippines. They were born and raised there, and they came to the United States when they were teenagers. They met in California, and they got married there, and I am the firstborn. Then a few years later, my brother was born. A few years after that, my parents divorced, and then my mom had my sister we have different dads, and my mom never married him, so she stayed a single mom. And in our home was my mom, myself, my brother, and my sister. My dad remarried soon after the divorce to a wonderful lady, my stepmom, and she had a daughter from a previous marriage, so I have a stepsister on that side. And my mom remarried a few years after that, and he has 3 kids from a previous marriage, so I have 3 step siblings on that side. And then I came from a huge extended family that consisted of my grandparents, my aunts and my uncles, and my cousins, who were more like my siblings because we did life with them every single day. So growing up, personality-wise, within my family and my extended family, I was very outgoing. I loved to sing and dance. I was loud, and I was very competitive and in games, and I always wanted to win. My kids always still call me today like I'm a try-hard because I try really hard to win all the time. And but with people I didn't know, I was very fearful. I was insecure in myself, and I was just shy and timid. So a few things that contributed to that. My dad is a wonderful guy. I love him so much, but he kind of grew up in very rough situations where he was always more cautious and always he took the safe route a lot of the times. And instead of saying something like, be safe, he would always say, Nick, don't get kidnapped. And that was something that I always had thought about when I was alone as a child every time. I just didn't want to get kidnapped. So I was always scared of people. I was scared of people looking at me. I was scared of eye contact. I was scared of people walking behind me, beside me, just scared of people in general. And then as far as my insecurity, I was going to school for kindergarten, and I realized I wasn't speaking the language everybody else was speaking. I didn't know what they were saying, actually. So I was insecure about speaking because I had no idea what they were saying. And I don't think I spoke a word of any language until my 2nd grade, because that's when they realized I needed help. So they put me in ESL, which is English as a second language, and that's when I started to learn English. I was also insecure about the way I looked. I was extremely thin, and I was tall and pale, and I had always felt awkward and looked awkward. And my family, like my extended family, they always had told me that as well. It was always like in a negative light. And the other guys on the podcast have referred to themselves at one point or another as pretty boys growing up. So pretty was definitely not my description growing up. I was totally the opposite. So I was also, I think, more embarrassed about this than anything growing up. And I went into kindergarten, and they had been taking roll call, and I realized I didn't know my first name. So my legal name is actually Christina, and my middle name is Nicole, and Nikki comes from Nicole. I remember my teacher taking roll call and calling out Christina, and I'm looking at her, that's not me, and just looking around like she's absent. That girl is not here. But really it was me. That was my name. And I was always embarrassed to talk. I was embarrassed about how I looked. I was embarrassed about and fearful of people. And I really didn't want to explain that I didn't like being called Christina. So every day when I went to school, I was always wanting to go back home where I felt safe and secure. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how my relationship was with my parents, and then also just the different viewpoints on like marriage and relationships that I saw, because I had my mom and dad's relationship, and then my dad and my stepmom, and then my mom and my sister's dad, and then my mom and her current marriage. So I never grew up in church. I really didn't know anything about the Bible. I didn't really know anything about the Word. So I learned right from wrong based on like my parents telling me what was right and what was wrong. And I think they did a pretty good job, especially with my extended family as well. Like they really shared values and, you know, morals and things like that. But when it came to relationships, I had so many different viewpoints on what a marriage should look like. So with my dad, my dad was like my best friend growing up. I was daddy's little girl. He was warm and kind. He was always fun. And we really did a lot of like singing and dancing together. So when the divorce happened, it was tough on me because he basically left the home and I had no idea why. I didn't know how long it was going to be for, and I really didn't know what that all meant. And because he remarried soon after, he went from like leaving my house to having his own place, and then having a new family that I went to go visit. So it wasn't necessarily completely bad. It was just totally different, a very different dynamic, and it never went back to kind of me feeling safe with my dad being at home. So that was tough, just kind of growing up with that version of looking at a relationship. But I did appreciate that my stepmom was very maternal. She really did care for us, and she cooked for us and cleaned for us. My dad always visited us after school every day, and I really appreciated that because he really took the time to really invest in our relationship. With my mom was very distant when I was young. She worked a lot, and she was much more introverted now that I look back, so I don't remember a lot when I was young. But when I was in high school and my parents were divorced at this time, she was like my roommate. She had a 2-bedroom, 1-bath with a living room upstairs. It had its own entrance, it had its own set of stairs, and she basically lived like introvertly and independently from us. And she was also kind of like the fun mom. Like everyone loved her. My friends loved her. There were no rules, no boundaries, no curfew. So I literally could do whatever I want, and it was totally fine with it. So I remember just calling when I cut school, and I would tell her, the school's gonna call, can you excuse my absence? And she would excuse it, no questions asked. There were times where she would come home. She was very spontaneous too. She would come home and say, we're going to Disneyland today, pack your bags, we're gonna go in an hour. So there was a lot of fun moments. So she would come out and play with us, and then when she wanted to go back into her place where she wanted to be by herself, she kind of went into her own space upstairs. With my brother and my sister, I lived downstairs with them, and I was the maternal one. I took care of them. I made sure they ate every day. I laid out their clothes every day, making sure that they looked cute for school for the week, because my mom would let them wear whatever they wanted, and I couldn't have that. So I always just made sure that they were good, and they had always called me kind of like their second mom, or really their mom growing up. I do want to mention a little bit about my sister's dad. He did live with us for a little while, and I remember just being very uncomfortable around him. And he lived with us, I'm not quite sure for how long, but I remember him being there, and just me seeing that picture of another different relationship where, they didn't get married, but had my sister. So, and I love my sister so much, but it was just a different picture again. My mom dated, after him, dated a few men before she remarried. And some cared to know us, and some didn't care to know who we were. And unfortunately, the one that she married didn't really take the time to build a relationship with us. So that was really tough. We didn't know she was gonna get married until that morning. And so everyone was kind of surprised about what that she was actually getting married, including her siblings and the extended family, because we all did life together. So that was a big kind of shock to all of us. We didn't know that that was how serious they were going to be. It was all of a sudden. And it was hard because we had already been living a certain way. And then when he came and lived in the home, he wanted to establish certain rules and consequences that almost were a little too late, because I was already an adult by then and my siblings were a little bit older. So it caused a lot of chaos in our home and tension. I don't want to say more than I need to for that, but just know that that relationship was a really tough relationship to be a part of. So, and I also do want to mention that my mom and I have a really good relationship. I don't want to end it with that story. We do have a good relationship. I still see her once a week, and you know, she's involved with our kids' lives. So if there's anything that we need, we definitely will know that she will be there for us. So when my husband and I met, we knew we wanted to do things God's way, and we wanted to do it. We wanted to have a good foundation, and we wanted to have a great family, even though we both had no idea what that looked like, because we were never raised in the church. We never went to church, but we knew that we wanted to have a great family. I want to go back a little bit to just when I actually gave my life to the Lord. I was actually a junior in high school, and that was around the time when I actually started making some friends, and I realized that people weren't as fearful, wasn't scary as I thought they would be. So I wasn't as fearful, and I started to make really good friendships, and had a great group of friends that I was very interested in learning about their lives, and it was really fun and interesting, actually. So that really helped ease my fears with people. And I actually got with a guy that I was with for about 6 to 7 years, and we actually thought we were going to get married, but we didn't. He was a good guy, but he was into a lot of different things, and it just made some poor choices. He was in a gang. He was drinking, smoking, gambling, and selling drugs, and I was exposed to a whole new world for the years that I was with him. And even after we had broken up, I had gone out doing, you know, all the things, partying and all the things that a normal rebellious child would probably do. So my husband was in the same boat. He was kind of living that same lifestyle. So when we got married, we wanted to do it God's way, but we had no idea what that was going to look like. And we actually got pregnant the night of our wedding, because 9 months later, we actually gave birth to our son. And he was precious. He was a gift from God, and we were so blessed to have him. And at the same time, we were facing so much opposition. We were coming from just like that lifestyle of partying to being married to being instant parents, and then we actually faced quite a few setbacks in our finances that caused a lot of strain. And my husband actually quit his job on a business deal that was promising him a certain amount of income each month that only added up to about half the income that was promised. And then as I was going into my leave for maternity, my company actually had let me go not based on performance, but based on the fact that I was going on leave. And I also was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease at that time. And even with all that, we still wanted to have another child. So we were praying for another child, and we were having trouble getting pregnant. So during this time, we actually were just trying to really plug into the Word. We were actually aligned with a couple at church that were like our spiritual mentors, or we call them like our spiritual mom and dad. And they actually helped us really well, like navigate through life, and helped us learn how to read the Word, apply it, and, you know, just really apply it to our lives. So we were learning how to pray for our finances. We were learning how to pray for my health, praying for our future pregnancy, just doing all the things we needed to do. And little by little, we actually saw God's promises come into our lives. I was completely healed from an autoimmune disease that I was told that, you know, there was a slim chance of getting healed from that or getting into remission. And even if I did get into remission, the doctors were saying that I would probably get triggered back into the autoimmune. But I knew that once that first lab results came back normal, I knew God had healed me. And I'm just so thankful and give him all the glory for that, because I had never gone back once. We also had seen a financial breakthrough in our finances, where we were just extremely blessed in our businesses. And to see that from not knowing exactly what God's word was beforehand and then applying it, we were just really excited to see God's promises come to pass in our lives. And we were able to give more to our church. We were able to give more to organizations that we really felt called to. And we also bought our very first home. So that was a big deal for us. And we also got pregnant with our daughter. And she was actually born the same day as our son, just 5 years later. So that was definitely all God letting us know that it was his doing, because we had trouble for those 5 years in between. And she was born on the exact same day. So every time we share that with people that they have the same birthday, we always really share that it was God's doing, and that he blessed us with her. So we're so grateful for that. In 2020 was actually the hardest year of my life. It was a year of COVID, and it was a lot of division in the world, as you all know. There was a lot of division in my extended family. There was a lot of division in my business. We had no churches open in California, so we couldn't go to anyone. We were doing it all from online. We actually had personal fraud happen in our finances, where thousands of dollars were stolen out of our account. Our kids were in a Christian school, and a Christian private school, and the principal was actually charged with fraud that year for soliciting donations for faking cancer for years. And it was a big ordeal in our school, because we were a tightly knit family community, and it was just a lot of chaos at that time. We also adopted a little puppy right before shelter in place, and we thought it was going to be a great thing, but actually it caused a lot more division in our house. Our older dog bit our younger one, and we had to keep them separated, and we were all cooped up in this house with the dogs being separated and all the fraud that was happening and all the division in the world. It was just a lot for us. And then my husband and I actually separated for a few months, and that was a really tough time for all of us as a family. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the separation. My husband is an amazing man, and he is really God's gift to me. But in 2020, I think every couple kind of goes through like a crazy cycle. You kind of have a similar cycle that you go through when you guys go through different things or arguments. So our counselor calls it the crazy dance. Oh no, she calls it the dance we do. So the dance we do basically is we'll get into some kind of disagreement, it will escalate, and my husband will leave and say that he's not worthy and that he's not good enough and that we're better off without him. So that was kind of like a cycle that we had always gone through from the beginning of our marriage, but in 2020 it escalated to a point where it was just really bad. So we had those spiritual mentors, so I actually called out to them, as I usually do, and I think they were kind of fed up with it. I was kind of fed up with it, and I think my husband was actually kind of fed up with it. But they actually suggested that we stay separated, and they actually referred us to professional counselors because we really needed professional help. So we went and called someone that they had referred, and thankfully she was actually able to take us in at that time. She was completely full, but she took us in, and she did recommend that we stay separated, that we work on the things that we needed to work on. And what we found was actually my husband had a lot of trauma from when he was young. And I didn't know that, and he didn't know that. But as we went through the counseling, that's what we had realized, that he was going through some of those feelings from when he was younger. And I just remember my daughter always asking me, like, why did Daddy leave? When is he coming back? What is happening? And it just made me flash back to when I was her age. That's actually when my dad left my house. So I broke for her because I knew what she was feeling in that moment. And sorry. And I just remember being strong for her as a mom, and I would tell her and our son, don't worry, it's going to be okay. It's just temporary, and God's going to make it work out. So that's what I would tell them. But at night, I would just not know. So I remember in one of our meetings when we were meeting with the counselor, sometimes it was my husband going with the counselor, just him and the counselor doing work, and then sometimes it was me, my husband, and the counselor. And there was this one time where we went, and the counselor was actually asking him, trying to figure out where he actually felt like that for the very first time, where he felt not worthy or not good enough. And it actually, she kept asking questions, and it kept going like younger and younger, and it actually went back to when he was 4 years old. So all I remember was God giving me his eyes to see my husband the way God saw him, as a 4-year-old boy who was wounded and broken and just wanting approval, that he was good enough. So I knew in that moment that God wanted me to be patient, and God wanted me to be his helper. So all the feelings that I was feeling in this, I had to just have God heal me in it, and really be there for my husband to help him through this journey. So that's what we did. We went through the counseling. So it was really tough because we would see each other once a week, and it was hard to say hello and then spend the day and say goodbye. But we knew we wanted to do it God's way, and we knew we had a counselor who was helping us, so we wanted to just continue to do the work, and that's what we did. We continued to do the work week in and week out, and finally, there was a day when he was actually coming home, and it was a big celebration, of course, with the 4 of us and our dogs. And we set a new standard from that moment on. We have done family Bible studies each week, and we also did worship nights during that time, where we would pick songs. Each of us would pick songs, and we would put it on a playlist, and we would just worship the Lord at night. And I'm so grateful for it, and I'm so thankful for just God being in the center of our marriage, and just seeing it through to where it is today. We really do have great kids. We have a great marriage. We really appreciate being together so much more, and we really don't take it for granted. We were so desperate to be in church in person, and we were also hoping and being desperate for the kids to go back to school in person. So we actually decided to move to Texas in 2021, and it was a big decision for us because we have, like I had mentioned, our extended family is a big part of our lives. We did life with them pretty much every single day. And so it was a big change for us, but we knew we needed to put our family first and to put God first in our family. And so we made the move. We took the leap of faith. We didn't know anyone in Texas except one family. And we left everything and everyone we knew for us to really focus on God and focus on our family in Texas. So it really has been one of the best decisions of our lives. We've been planted in a church that we love, and it's not just planted, or it's not just that we're attending, we're actually serving. All of us are serving in some capacity, and we have found our family here. We call them our family of choice. And we also have our kids started school here in Texas, and it has been a really great confirmation, because I remember the first week the kids would come home and they were just ecstatic, saying that they prayed at the school, in the rallies and at the games. And for a public school to be able to pray in a public school, it was unheard of. So it was just God reminding us and confirming that we were in the right place, and we're so thankful for it. And our marriage has been the best it's ever been. We haven't done our dance in years, and so we're grateful that we're able to communicate with one another, and the skills that we have learned have helped us to be better versions of ourselves, but also better for our marriage and better for our kids and better for our family. So it really has been a huge blessing for us, and we really can't imagine our lives any better, but I know that God has more for us. But I am so thankful to see the fruit from the work that we have put in and the seeds that we've planted for, and to experience it as within our family. Our kids always want to be with us. They're 18 and 13 now, and they always want to be with us. Like it's crazy, because I can't even imagine like someone saying that their 18 and 13-year-old want to be with them and actually enjoy being with their parents. We are really like all best friends, and we really have been working on each of our developments to become the best version of ourselves for God and to advance His kingdom. So we couldn't have done that like without Him at the center of our family. So my husband and I will be married for 20 years this year. It'll be 22 years that we've been together, and we have known each other even before then. So for more than half our lives, we've been in each other's lives, and he is God's greatest gift to me, and I'm so thankful for him. And although that season was hard, I know that it was needed, and I know that God had a plan for it, and it was to help us to become to have a greater marriage, and also to have a great family, which is the biggest part of my life is family. Of course, God is first, but family is a huge part of my life, and I knew, and my husband and I both knew, we wanted to have a great family from the very beginning. So I just want to encourage everyone, for anyone who grew up in the church or who didn't grow up in the church, or wherever you're at, God will meet you where you're at. He loves you unconditionally. He has plans for you. He knows the numbers of hair you have on your head, and He really does want the best for you, has great gifts for you, and He wants to do exceedingly abundantly more than you can ask or think. And I'm just grateful for this opportunity to share my story. I hope it inspires you or encourages you, and I hope to see you on next week's episode.